The sun rose slowly over a wide western valley where dust floated like quiet breath above the land. A lonely ranch stood near a dry river, where wind bent the grass and old wooden fences whispered of long days and longer nights. This land had known sorrow and hope, and it remembered every footstep that crossed it. On this morning the earth seemed heavy, as if it carried a secret too painful to release. Far from the ranch, 5 Apache girls were held beneath a tall oak tree. Their hands were bound, and their eyes carried fear, but also courage learned from mothers and grandmothers who taught them to stand tall even when the world turned cruel. The girls were sisters by spirit, not by blood, and each carried a different dream. One dreamed of healing herbs, another of songs around the fire, another of teaching children, another of riding free across open plains, and the youngest dreamed simply of living. They had been accused by strangers who did not know their names or their hearts. The men who captured them spoke in harsh voices and believed strength meant control. They believed fear was power and that mercy was weakness. The girls were marched through dust and silence as the sky watched without judgment. When they reached the oak tree, the rope was prepared, and the air grew cold even under the bright sun. At the ranch, a lone rancher stood at his fence. He was a man shaped by loss and patience. His wife had passed years before, and the land became his companion. He spoke to horses more than people and listened to the wind as if it were an old friend. This morning, he felt something pull at him like a hand on his chest, a restlessness that would not let him stay still. He saddled his horse without knowing why and rode toward the distant hills. As he rode, memories rose within him. He remembered a time when a stranger saved his life during a storm and asked for nothing in return. He remembered his mother telling him that courage was choosing to act when fear tells it to hide. The horse senses urgency and moved fast to the wind, carried faint sounds across the land, sounds of raised voices and despair. Under the oak tree, the girls began to pray not for rescue, but for strength. They whispered words taught by elders, words that honored the earth and the sky. They promised each other that even in their final breath, they would not give their captors the satisfaction of seeing them broken. Their courage confused the men who expected tears, and begging the leader grew angry and ordered the rope tightened. The rancher crested a ridge and saw the gathering below. His heart pounded as he understood what was happening. He did not think of danger or consequence. He only knew that turning away would haunt him forever. He urged his horse forward and rode straight toward the tree. His voice cut through the air as he shouted for them to stop. The men turned, surprised by the sudden arrival of a stranger who did not look afraid. He dismounted and stood between the girls and the rope. His hands were steady and his eyes clear. He spoke of justice and humanity and the cost of cruelty. He said that no land could prosper on the suffering of the innocent. The men laughed at first, but something in his calm resolve unsettled them. He offered himself as witness and protector and dared them to carry out their act before him. Time seemed to pause. The girls felt a shift in the air like the moment before rain. The rancher met each gaze and nodded, as if promising that they were not alone. In that moment, hope flickered where despair had lived. The sun climbed higher, and the land waited to see what choice would be made next. Silence spread beneath the oak tree, heavy and tense. Like a held breath, the men who had brought the 5 Apache girls shifted their weight, unsure what to do next. They were used to fear and obedience, not calm resistance. The lone rancher stood firm, his boots planted in the dust as shadow. Falling across the rope, his presence changed the shape of the moment, as if the land itself leaned closer to listen. The leader of the group stepped forward, his face hard from years of anger and loss. He asked the rancher why he cared about girls who were not his people. The rancher answered slowly, choosing each word with care. He said that injustice does not belong to one people or another, and that cruelty stains every hand that allows it. He spoke of how the land remembers every wrong, and how blood spilled without cause poisons the future. The girls listened quietly, their hearts still raced, but something inside them began to settle. They saw in the rancher not just protection, but respect. He did not look at them as victims or burdens. He looked at them as human beings worthy of life and dignity that alone gave them strength. They stood straighter, lifting their chins, meeting the eyes of the men who had tried to break them. One of the younger men hesitated. He remembered his own sister who laughed like summer wind and trusted the world. He wondered what story would be told of him if he allowed this to continue. The doubt spread like a crack in stone. The leader sensed it and grew louder, ordering the others to prepare again, but his voice no longer carried the same certainty. The rancher reached into his saddlebag and pulled out water, offering it to girls. First, the simple act confused the men. Further kindness had no place in their plan. Yet here it was undeniable. The girls drank slowly, grateful for the cool relief and the message it carried that their lives mattered. The youngest smiled faintly, and the rancher felt his resolve deepen. He spoke again this time, offering a different path. He said he would take responsibility for the girls, bring them to his ranch, and ensure no harm came from them. He offered supplies and labor in return, not as payment, but as proof of goodwill. He reminded the men that violence would only bring retaliation and sorrow, while mercy could open a door to peace. The wind picked up carrying dust, and the smell of dry grass, the oak leaves rustled, as if whispering counsel. The men looked at one another, weighing pride against consequence, fear against compassion. The leader clenched his jaw, struggling with the loss of control. He had built his identity on power, and now it slipped through his fingers like sand. At last the younger man stepped forward and loosened one knot, then another followed. Slowly the ropes fell away from the girl's hands. A moment felt unreal, fragile. As Glass, the leader, stared at the ground, then turned away, unable to face what he had nearly done. He signaled for his group to leave, and they mounted their horses, riding off without looking back. The girls stood free, though their legs trembled from strain and relief. Tears finally came, not of weakness, but release. They gathered around the rancher, surrounding him with quiet gratitude. He told them they owed him nothing, and that the land had simply guided him where he was needed. He invited them to ride with him to the ranch, where they could rest and decide their next steps in safety. As they mounted spare horses and began the journey, the sky seemed brighter. The path ahead was uncertain, but no longer ended in despair. The girls shared their names and stories, and the rancher listened, learning the weight each carried. He felt a stir in his heart, long dormant, a sense of purpose returning. Behind them, the oak tree stood silent, its branches empty of rope. The land exhaled, releasing the tension of what might have been. As they rode toward the horizon, hope walked beside them, steady and real, ready to grow into something stronger in the days to come. The journey to the ranch was quiet, at first broken only by the sound of hooves and the wind moving through tall grass. The girls rode close together, still shaken, yet slowly feeling the truth of their freedom settle into their bones. Each mile placed more distance between them and the oak tree where their lives had nearly ended. The rancher led the way, guiding them toward a place he had not shared with anyone in a long time. When the ranch came into view, the girls saw a modest home, weathered by years of sun and storm. A corral stood nearby with horses resting calmly, and a small garden struggled bravely against the dry soil. To the rancher, it was simply home, but to the girls it looked like shelter and promise. The air felt different here, lighter, as if sorrow did not linger long on this land. The rancher helped them down from their horses and showed them a shaded area where water and food waited. He had prepared little, but offered everything he had. The girls ate slowly, grateful for each bite, feeling strength return to their bodies. As they rested, he kept a respectful distance, giving them space to breathe and understand that they were safe. Later, as the sun lowered, they gathered near the porch. The rancher asked if they wished to share their stories, and said silence was also welcome. The eldest spoke first. Her voice was steady, though her eyes held memories of pain. She told of their village taken by force, and of their flight across harsh land. Seeking safety, they had trusted the wrong people, and paid for it nearly with their lives. The others added pieces of their journey, until the rancher saw not a single story, but 5 interwoven, paths marked by resilience. The rancher shared his own past in return. He spoke of love lost and how the land became both refuge and prison. He admitted that loneliness had grown so familiar, he forgot other ways of living. He said that when he saw them beneath the oak tree, something awakened inside him, a reminder that purpose is found in standing for others, even when it costs something. As night approached, he offered them the barn loft and extra blankets. The girls accepted, thankful for rest. Yet still alert, years of danger had taught them caution. Before sleep, they gathered and sang a soft song from their childhood, a song of endurance, and hope. The melody drifted across the ranch, settling into the soil and the stars above. In the quiet hours, the rancher sat alone, watching the sky. He wondered what tomorrow would bring, and whether trouble would follow them. He knew that protecting the girls might draw anger from those who let them go, yet fear no longer ruled him. He felt a calm certainty that some choices define a life, and this was one he would never regret. Morning arrived with gentle light. The girls woke early and stepped outside, breathing in the open space. They began helping without being asked, tending the garden, fetching water, caring for the horses. Work grounded them, reminding them of skills learned long before fear entered their days. The rancher watched with quiet respect, seeing how naturally they moved within the rhythm of the land. As the days passed, trust grew slowly, like seeds pushing through dry earth. The girls laughed again, sharing stories and teaching the rancher songs and traditions. He in turn taught them how to work the land and care for the animals. The ranch became a place of shared effort and healing. Yet beyond the fences the world remained uncertain. Rumors traveled fast across open country, and not all would welcome this fragile peace. Unseen eyes watched from afar, and old resentments waited for a chance to return. The rancher sensed in the wind, and prepared himself, knowing that true protection required more than courage. It required endurance and unity. Still in those moments before the storm, the ranch stood as a quiet sanctuary, a place where 5 lives were no longer measured by the rope they escaped, but by the future they were beginning to build together. The calm days of the ranch slowly gave way to a feeling of watchfulness. The wind no longer felt like a friend, but a messenger carrying distant warnings. The rancher noticed signs in the dust, unfamiliar tracks near the outer fence, and birds scattering suddenly from the trees. He did not speak of it at first, choosing instead to prepare in silence. The girls sensed a change. As well, they had lived long enough in danger to recognize when peace was fragile. They gathered in the evenings, sharing thoughts and planning what they would do if trouble returned. Fear was present, but it no longer ruled them together. They had learned that unity turned weakness into strength. One afternoon, a rider appeared at the edge of the land, a single figure, watching from afar, then turning away. The message was clear. They had not been forgotten. The rancher called the girls together and spoke honestly. He said that those men might return with others, and that staying meant facing that risk. He offered them a choice to leave under cover at night. If they wished, he promised to guide them to safer lands. The eldest girl answered for all of them. She said running had cost them too much already. She said that standing together was the only way forward. The others agreed, their voices firm. They said the ranch was the first place since their village where they felt seen and protected. They would not abandon it or the man who had risked his life for them. That night they planned not for violence, but for defense. The rancher showed them safe routes, places to hide, and ways to signal danger. The girls shared knowledge of the land herbs that soothed pain and plants that masked scent. They worked until exhaustion replaced fear and sleep came at last. Days later the threat arrived. A group of men rode toward the ranch, dust rising behind them like a dark cloud. The rancher stood at the fence while the girls took their positions, hidden yet ready. Hearts pounded, but minds stayed clear. When the men reached the gate, the leader demanded the girls be handed over, claiming they belonged to no one. The rancher answered that no human being belongs to another. He said the girls were under his protection, and that any attempt to take them would be met with resistance. His voice was calm, but unyielding. The girls watched, feeling pride and resolve. They knew that whatever happened next, their lives were no longer defined by fear alone. Tension stretched until it seemed the air itself might break. Then a sound rose from the hills. Hooves thundered as riders approached from the opposite direction. Neighbors, drawn by earlier warnings and shared respect for the rancher, arrived to stand beside him. They did not carry hatred, only determination. Faced with unexpected unity, the men hesitated. They had come expecting isolation and submission, not community. And resolved, the leader argued, threatened, and realized he held no power here. One by one, they turned away, retreating into the distance, leaving only dust and silence behind. Relief washed over the ranch like cool rain. The girls emerged from hiding, their faces lit with disbelief and gratitude. The neighbors stayed, while sharing food and stories, strengthening bonds that would last beyond this day. When they left, the ranch felt safer than ever before. As evening fell, the girls gathered with the rancher, watching the sun sink below the horizon. They spoke of how courage grows when shared and how protection is strongest when rooted in compassion. The land seemed to listen approvingly, holding their words within its vast memory. Though challenges would come again, they knew now that they could face them together. The ranch was no longer just a place of refuge. It had become a symbol of resistance against cruelty and a promise that even in the harshest world, humanity could still choose kindness. After the riders disappeared, the ranch entered a new season of quiet strength. The fear that once lingered like a shadow slowly loosened its grip. The girls moved with more confidence, now no longer flinching at every distant sound. They had faced the past and stood firm, and that knowledge settled deep within them like a steady flame. Each morning began with shared work. The rancher and the girls repaired fences, planted new crops, and tended the animals. The land responded generously, as if rewarding their care. Green shoots pushed through the soil, and the horses grew calmer under gentle hands. Work became more than survival. It became healing through effort and patience. They rebuilt not only the ranch, but pieces of themselves once thought lost. The girls began teaching the rancher their traditions. They showed him how to listen to the land for signs of change, how to honor water and fire, and how stories carry wisdom across generations. In return, he taught them skills of the ranch and how to trade goods with nearby settlements. Without fear or submission, respect flowed both ways, forming a bond stronger than any written promise. News of what had happened at the ranch traveled outward, but this time it carried a different tone. People spoke of unity and bravery of a place where injustice had been challenged. Without hatred, travelers stopped by offering supplies, and friendship the ranch slowly transformed into a meeting place, where differences were not erased but respected. One evening, the youngest girl asked the rancher why he chose to stand alone that day beneath the oak tree. He thought for a long moment before answering. He said that some moments test who we truly are. He said that turning away would have meant losing himself forever. The girl nodded, understanding that courage often begins as a quiet decision long before it becomes action. As seasons changed, the girls spoke of the future. They no longer talked only of escape, but of growth. One wished to learn healing more deeply. Another dreamed of teaching children both Apache wisdom and the skills of the land. Others spoke of forming a new community built on fairness and shared responsibility. The rancher listened, feeling pride and hope mingle in his chest. Challenges still arose. Drought tested their crops and illness touched the animals, yet they faced each trial together, drawing on collective strength. When one faltered, another stepped forward. The ranch became a living lesson that survival is strongest when carried by many hands and open hearts. On a clear night, they gathered around a fire, sharing stories, and laughed. The stars felt closer than ever, and the air hummed with peace. The girls sang again, not the song of sorrow from their first night, but a new one of resilience, and becoming the rancher realized then that the land no longer echoed with loneliness, it resonated with life. Though the world beyond remained imperfect, within this circle a different truth had taken root, that compassion could change destinies, and that protection born from respect could outlast fear. The girls were no longer defined by what almost happened to them. They were defined by what they chose to build after. As the fire burned low, the rancher looked at the faces around him and felt certain that the stand he took had grown into something far greater than a single act of bravery. It had become a shared path forward, illuminated by trust and purpose, leading toward a future once unimaginable. The years that followed unfolded slowly like a long sunrise over the western land. The ranch no longer felt like a place at the edge of the world, but a center of quiet change. People arrived not out of fear, but curiosity and respect. They came to trade, to learn, and to listen. The land responded with steady harvests and clear water, as it approved of the balance now held there. The 5 Apache girls had grown into women shaped by endurance and vision. Each carried forward the strength born on the day they chose to stand rather than run. The eldest became a voice of guidance, traveling between communities, sharing lessons of cooperation and dignity. Her words carried weight because they were lived, not imagined. Another devoted herself to healing, blending ancient knowledge with careful practice, easing pain and restoring hope. Others found their paths as teachers, builders, and mediators, weaving connections where division once lived. The rancher aged with grace, lines forming on his face not from bitterness, but from years of purpose. He no longer thought himself as a rescuer. He saw himself as a guardian of space where others could become who they were meant to be. He learned as much as he taught and found joy in watching others rise. The loneliness that once pressed against his chest had been replaced by belonging. One clear morning they gathered for a shared meal beneath an open sky. Laughter moved easily among them. Children played nearby, their voices bright. And unafraid, the women watched them with soft smiles, knowing that the future now carried different possibilities. The rancher looked across the land, remembering the first day. He rode toward the oak tree. He understood now that courage does not end with a single act. It continues through patience, consistency, and care. Later that day, they returned once more to the oak tree, not out of sorrow, but remembrance. The branches stood tall, casting gentle shade. They stood together in silence, honoring what had been endured and what had been transformed. No ropes hung there, only wind, and bird-song. The past no longer claimed them. The place held no power except the meaning they chose to give it. As seasons turned, stories spread beyond the valley. People spoke of a ranch where justice was chosen over fear and unity over control. The tale inspired others to act in their own lives. Small changes grew into wider movements, shaping a quieter, kinder resistance against cruelty. The 5 women became symbols not because they sought it, but because they lived truth openly. At dusk, the rancher sat on the porch, watching the sun lower itself into the horizon. The land glowed warm and steady. He felt peace, knowing that even after he was gone, the values planted here would remain, carried forward by those who believed in them. The women joined him, and together they watched the stars appear one by one. In that shared silence, the meaning of their journey became clear. Survival had been only the beginning. What followed was purpose and connection. The land held their footsteps. The wind carried their voices, and the future waited open and unafraid. The story did not end there. It continued in every choice made with courage and passion, and respect echoing far beyond the valley into lives yet to come.